In 1986, California saw the premiere of Stephen Sondheim's and James Lapine's fairy tale musical Into the Woods. The story follows the antics of, the classic fairy tale characters. You got Little Red, you got Cinderella, you got Jack the Giant Slayer, Rapunzel, etc., etc. The musical impressed many with its depth and symbolism as it weaves together familiar fairy tales with new meaning. Overarching themes in Sondheim's and Lapine's Into the Woods, based on the script content as well as its execution, include the lack of absolutes during maturation from childhood to adulthood, and are achieved through subtleties of color, setting, and character. More specifically, color is used in the form of the cow is white as milk, the cape is red as blood, the hair is yellow. Why am I not singing this? 1 second. The cow is white as milk, the cape is red as blood, the hair is yellow as corn, the slipper is pure as gold. Setting is used in the form of woods, houses, and paths, and character is used in the form of casting.
Once upon a time. Later.
The musical is structured in a two-act format, as many musicals are, enabling the narrative to establish two stages of life, namely childhood and adulthood. For this reason, Act 2 of the original musical is much more mature in theme and in conclusion than Act 1 is. In effect, every event that takes place in the second act serves as a parable, if not a cautionary tale, about the perils of adulthood, whereas those in the first act herald the dilemmas and pitfalls of childhood. This is important to note because the timing and placement of events in symbolism, whether of color, setting, or character, is an essential factor in understanding the play itself. So, let's get cracking on that symbolism then. And just to be clear, we are limiting this to only the stage play, not the film adaptation, although the film adaptation does have some interesting symbolism that I would maybe one day like to cover, but that is not what we're doing right now.
1. The cow as white as milk.
At the beginning of Act 1, the objects which lend the color symbolism are introduced remarkably quickly. The cow is white as milk, milky white, which belongs to Jack and his mother, although it is unable to produce milk and therefore must be sold. The cape is red as blood, which belongs to Little Red Riding Hood, and she wears it on stage during her very first appearance. The hair is yellow as corn, which is that of Rapunzel, and the slipper is pure as gold, is given to Cinderella by her mother's ghost in order for the former to attend the prince's festival. These objects are said to be needed in order for the baker and his wife to produce a baby. One of the most interesting things right off the bat are the similes used to describe the items. The cow being compared to milk kind of makes sense, but it's strange that the cape would be as red as blood as opposed to maybe like a cardinal or a poppy or any of the red things that aren't blood, and that the hair is as yellow as corn. Like a lot of these similes seem weirdly specific. Calling the cape as red as blood has many undercurrents when paired with the fact that the cape was fashioned for Little Red by her grandmother, her blood relation. One role the cape plays in Act 1 is that it sticks out of the mouth of the wolf after he has eaten Little Red and her grandmother, alerting the baker to the trickery so that he may save them. A similar indication of trickery is performed slightly later in Act 1 by another red substance. Blood. It's the blood. Namely, it is the blood on Cinderella's slipper when her stepsisters are trying it on that indicates to Cinderella's prince that they are deceiving him in a really, really entertaining song that I wish I could sing right now, but that's not what this video essay is for. Therefore, the red cape and the red blood have two similarities in Act 1 besides color. They are shared between Red Riding Hood and her grandmother, and they help to indicate when deception is afoot. In a strange condensation of both ideas, the cape seems to symbolize the blood shed from loss of innocence, especially due to the occasions on which the cape is removed. Firstly, it is removed when the baker forcibly takes it from Little Red in order to satisfy the wish's demands.
Get the little girl and get the cape.
At which point Little Red, according to the script, stands numb for a moment, then lets out a blood-curdling scream followed by hysterical weeping. This is meant to symbolize the thievery of Red's virginity, although the baker immediately returns the cape and, by extension, her innocence. Later, however, after Red approaches the wolf and faces the consequences, another occasion on which she is said to release a blood-curdling scream, that's a coincidence? Well, not a coincidence. What I'm saying is it's not a coincidence. She willingly surrenders her cape as a reward to the baker for saving her, expressing that she hopes her grandmother will fashion her a new one from the wolf's carcass. Since the wolf's encounters with Red are heavily sexualized, unfortunately, especially in the song Hello Little Girl, in which the stage directions describe him as rubbing his thighs and devouring her with his eyes, which are two things that rhyme and are gross. The purposeful shedding of her cloak can also be seen as Red discarding her innocence. This relates to human maturation in that the cape is not present or even mentioned in Act 2, indicating that the process of growing up requires some loss of innocence. In Red's words, "Do not
put your faith in a cape and a hood. They will not protect you the way that they should."
The lack of absolutes during maturation is also established when Little Red says, "Isn't it nice to know a lot?"
And a little bit not.
In which knowing a lot is also a sign of lost innocence. The symbolism in The Cow is White as Milk is evident based on the effect it has on the characters. In the very beginning of the play, Jack enjoys a very close relationship with his cow, despite its lack of milk. In fact, Jack has only one other character trait that is as overtly stated as his love for Milky White, which is his tendency to dream. Throughout the beginning of Act 1, Jack's mother can be heard saying such things as, "This is not a time for dreaming," I think that's how it went, and "You can't just sit here dreaming pretty dreams." These statements are made within conversations about selling the cow, meaning that Jack's mother's insistence that he sell the cow is symbolic of her insistence that he stops dreaming. Whenever the cow is lost, it is because the character guarding it has lost focus on his or her dreams. When the focus is regained, so is the cow. For example, the baker's wife loses Milky White after jealously interrogating Cinderella about her night with the prince, thereby losing focus on her dream of having a family with the baker. The cow is returned to the baker by a mysterious man later revealed to be his absentee father.
Your son, with the last of your flesh and blood.
Son!
Which is significant because it plays into the baker's dream of becoming nothing like his father. Since the cow symbolizes dreams and aspirations, the desired product of a cow, milk, has to symbolize the desired product of dreams and aspirations, fulfillment. In the beginning of the play, Milky White has no milk, which parallels Jack's situation, in which he has many dreams but no fulfillment. He and his mother live in poverty. Milky White, like the cape, is mostly absent from Act 2 in a symbolic gesture that is essentially explained in Act 1 when Jack says,
"The difference between a cow and a bean is a bean can begin an adventure."
Metaphorically suggesting that a bean, or a stimulus for change, since, beans are seeds, make change, they grow stuff, is a more prudent token than a cow or a dream. However, the lack of absolutes remains relevant when, in Act 2, Jack says,
"I want a friend. And a pet."
Indicating that dreams are not fully outgrown. Since Rapunzel's hair is famously very long and the hair as yellow as corn originally refers to her hair, until later when some weird stuff happens, it can be assumed that the concept that the hair symbolizes must be a concept that manifests very prevalently in her life, a lot of hair, a lot of whatever the corn is. Much like Jack, besides her relation to the symbolic object, Rapunzel only seems to have one other blaring character trait: the fact that she is limited to her tower. In her situation, she is fully dependent on and compliant with her maternal figure, the witch.
"I am no longer a child. I wish to see the world."
When she begins to display independence and see her prince behind the witch's back, she is found out and her hair is cut, symbolizing that the link binding Rapunzel and the witch has been broken. Hair is used on another occasion in the first scene of Act 1. Cinderella's stepsister asks her to twist her hair in preparation for the ball, and Cinderella immediately complies. As she twists the hair, she describes the reason that she is so obedient.
Father said be nice, father said be good. That was always their advice, so be nice, Cinderella. Good, Cinderella. Nice.
Instantly, she is told to twist the hair tighter, and as she does, her mood changes, and she begins to ask herself,
"What's the good of being good if everyone is blind and you're always left behind?"
effectively rebelling against the instructions she has described. Since she has shifted to the opposite extreme in terms of obedience, she also shifts to the opposite extreme in terms of hair care, and her stepsister complains that her hair has been twisted too tightly. In short, hair serves to symbolize obedience, or, more generally, that which links parent and child. Even the use of the simile comparing it to corn can be seen as a connection between Rapunzel and her biological parents who stole vegetables from the witch. This relates to maturation because it is the only one of the 4 items to prominently appear in Act 2, indicating that the connection is not lost. However, Rapunzel is killed by the giant because her sheltered past has not prepared her for future situations, indicating that such connections should not be taken to excessive lengths. Excessive lengths. The slipper as pure as gold is also unique among the objects in that it does not exist until the characters enter the eponymous woods. It is given to Cinderella at the hazel tree where her mother was buried. Yes, it's a hazel tree, not a willow tree. In the stage play, in the movie, it's a willow tree. Doesn't really matter, but it's weird. Anyway, at the hazel tree where her mother was buried, and there's only one main instance in which Cinderella's slippers are particularly significant, predictably the iconic loss of a single shoe. Gold, too, is featured in only one form outside of Cinderella's ball attire, in the treasure of the giant. These two usages make it likely that the slipper as pure as gold symbolizes decision-making for various reasons. Firstly, it is worth noting that the witch's recipe calls for only one slipper rather than both, and that Cinderella remains in possession of both slippers until the point at which she decides on exactly how she intends to handle her prince. At that point, Cinderella, who is by nature an indecisive character, deigns to favor one option over all others, represented by her favoring one shoe and abandoning the other.
I have already given up one shoe this evening. My feet cannot bear to give up another.
The giant's gold, meanwhile, provokes Jack to commit the theft and other actions that drive Act 2, acting as a driving force for all the decisions that Jack makes.
More money. Keep this, and I will go fetch more.
Oh, no, wait!
This relates to the baker's quest because goal-driven decision-making is necessary in child-rearing and, to an extent, child conception. The slipper, however, is absent from Act 2, which can be attributed to the fact that the second act leads the characters to situations in which there are no simple answers or absolutes that the characters can choose in order to solve their problems, as is often the case in adult life. To put it another way, in Act 2, Cinderella is no longer able to put her shoes or decisions into other people's hands and hope a solution occurs. Now for the setting.